terms of graffiti exhibitions and walls being painted on one site, it's probably one of the biggest that's kind of happened in the UK. Kind of stepping away from that white cube gallery space, it's painting directly on the walls, and I want to represent all of those different styles of painting which have been a part of my journey. My name is Bryce Davies. I'm a graffiti artist based in Cardiff. I've been painting here for around 18 years or so. Graffiti culture started by teenagers painting their names on trains in New York. It's kind of one of the very few art forms that has been created by young people. The old arguments with graffiti and vandalism, it's too broad for that these days, you know. It's clear what's commissioned or what's legal, and it's clear what's not. And they all have their beauty and they all have their place in the culture. I grew up painting my name illegally. That's how we learnt, was painting track sides, roadsides, derelicts. This idea of putting your name up and seeing it up and travelling on public transport and seeing your name from trains, and there'll always be that romance between a graffiti artist or a graffiti writer and train tracks, whether it's on trains or whether it's on track sides. There'll always be this natural home where graffiti looks right and the aesthetics look right. Growing up in Cardiff, I think one of the biggest influences for me was skateboarding. It's probably the first thing which really took hold of my life and gave it some purpose. And it brought together all these kind of crazy characters and people who possibly didn't fit in somewhere else. The work that I was looking at, which was influencing us, again, remembering this is before graffiti was on the internet, were those same books that the first guy or the second, third generation graffiti artists were looking at, you know, books like the Henry Chalfant books and Martha Cooper books, so spray can art, subway art, they were still the Bibles, there wasn't anything else to go and buy. We were still looking at those first pieces by Scheme and Phase 2 and Lee and the early kind of New York writers. Alongside all this, I was also a b-boy for years, so I was doing a lot of breakdancing professionally as well. It all came out of hip-hop, graffiti, b-boying, and I had friends who were MCs and DJs.
Let me reminisce the way that it used to be. Our people chilled in the Cardiff community, chilling back, they just hear a little hip-hop, hear the beatboxers, yeah, outside the chip shop, and it's all good until the man with spray cans looking at the wall, wrestling it is so amazing, and people sit back, yo, they're still smiling, cause you know that stuff is just so damn inspiring, and people gotta raise a hand in the air, from range down up to EDO, I really don't care if you like the way I'm dropping it, the words never boring, it's all kind of a lesson, move on with the story.
I had a really good friend called David Fort. He wasn't a graffiti artist, but he was an artist, and I went to see his studio and saw the paintings he was making and just was really inspired by the work ethic, where he was all about treating it like a 9 to 5, even though we worked together in a shop in town, but he would then spend all his time in the studio and make frames, stretch the canvas by hand and prime it with PVA and water and seal it and go through this whole process before he'd even started painting. And to me it was always such a throwaway thing. It was, you know, not even emulsion a wall, just cover it straight over with spray paint and then take a photo and that's it, you're done, it's gone. Obviously it's a totally different approach, and it's a little bit more precious, I guess, and graffiti is not that, it's not precious. And that inspired me to get a studio space, moved into Kings Road Art Studios and set up there for about 5 years. Stretched canvas, made frames, made paintings, explored a lot of different stuff, had a life model in once, did some landscape stuff, used to collect bits of wood out of skips and do this project called Grow, so I'd paint these sort of either industrial scenes or landscape images and screw them up in boarded up shop windows or boarded up houses or derelict spots and just screw them up as canvases that people could either leave or take away or whatever. Graffiti lends itself to those environments. It is about being outside of the limelight and it is about being outside of society. I think it was a good time in Cardiff. We all bounced off each other a lot, even though we were all very different artists from different fields. I was still kind of struggling with, am I a graffiti artist or am I like a fine artist or something else? But, you know, I didn't think it really mattered looking back at the time what I was.
Darling, I am sorry, but I can't talk to you.
My dad died when I was about 2, and I was too young to remember him. But I saw the effect it had on everyone around me. All I ever heard growing up were these incredible stories about this amazing guy, and it gave me complexes as a kid. It's part of the root of depression as a teenager, and obviously that's not what people were trying to kind of give me or to try and influence with me by. They were telling me all these great stories as a positive thing, as like this amazing person. But it was, it was shrouded for me in this sense of I'm not as good as that person, and it created a lot of problems for me growing up for years, and it's taken a series of amazing people to help me kind of be a lot more positive and to change myself. I think it's something I'm always still doing, is that.
When I'm not with you, can I tell you just how I feel? And you know these words.
Dav had this album by DOOFER, who are kind of local Cardiff legends. I was very much sort of funk, hip-hop, reggae kind of background. That's always what I'd listened to, a lot of hip-hop at the time. And this was very much singer-songwriter kind of stuff, and not really something I ever listened to. It was a time when I was quite down, and the DOOFER album had a lot of that in there. It had a lot of celebrating the kind of the down and outs as much as, trying to kind of put a positive slant on things. But there's almost like a lot of tragedy in some of the lyrics, and Peaceful Progress was a lyric in one of the songs which kind of just spoke volumes to me. It was like a concept. Peaceful progress was like getting on and doing what makes you happy and not making any excuses for it. So Peaceful Progress I kind of took on board, and I was like, yeah, I'll use that. I'll start signing Peaceful Progress, which was this idea of a concept. I made a video at the time, and I approached Mark, who was one of the guys from DOOFER. It was one of his lyrics, and asked his permission to use the song in the video. And he was amazing, he was just really up for it. He said, yeah, of course, that's exactly what our music is about. And that, again, inspired me, just these guys, which were incredible musicians, being really giving with people using their material. So from that point, I kind of formed this relationship with Mark and Chris. They were all really inspiring guys, incredible musicians. They played at our wedding. Mark taught my son guitar for a short while. And then last year, really sadly, Mark passed away. And it was, a massive blow to a lot of people. I saw the similarities between his life having young children and my life having young children, what it would be like if I passed away and left my wife bringing up children. So it was a really sad time, and it's something I still think about, and I feel through my journey as an artist and my own personal journey and what the lyrics of Peaceful Progress have given me in my life, those 2 words, and also the inspiration coming from the music that they made. I felt like I owe Mark a lot, and I still feel like that. I feel like without him even realising it, he's given me so much that I've built my life around. In a way, this exhibition is personally kind of a tribute to Mark as well. Fast forward a little while to about 5-6 years ago, we opened the first Boiler House studio. We took on a semi-derelict warehouse space, created like a pop-up event space, and basically did big graffiti exhibitions and parties there. It was very much, this is graffiti, it's not like a monster under the stairs. It was set up so that it was accessible and open to other people. So it was open for the public to kind of come in and not just this closed book. This is the new Boiler House space, and we have been here, I think, almost 2 years now. The idea to kind of paint this whole space came from wanting and talking about doing it for the last 6 years with the old Boiler House space.
Seen some shit, but you're down with it.
Years ago when I started, I had a real battle between what I was doing. I'd come through a big graffiti background and then slowly transitioned into getting a bit more work and doing more environmentally based projects and creating images and pictures on walls rather than letters, which is a strictly graffiti approach. It's painting for the public. It's painting backgrounds or murals or images like flowers for gardens or Welsh dragons in Wales, or you've got the valleys. I paint loads of stuff based on miners and old mining towns. I did a really nice piece earlier this year in SHANGHAI based on the mining disaster. This is a tiny community which was affected by this massive disaster, like a house, almost pretty much every house in the village was affected by either their son or husband or dad or granddad getting killed in this explosion. That's painting for the community, that's taking the community's ideas and painting it, and now I get so much more now why that's almost more important. Doing these murals for people is more important than doing some really clever, like overthought out graffiti piece, because this is a mural which is soft around the edges, but it speaks to a community. The community's heart and soul is in this simple piece of work on an old railway bridge, but now I see the importance and I actually take pride in creating those community works, you know, and that's not street, that's not hip hop, but that's real life.
Paint your life in bright colours.
Painting with a crew is all about the crew dynamic. You're all doing your own individual thing, so you have your area, which is your style, but then you've got this bigger picture where it's a collaboration and it's all about the overall picture as much as it is the details. You can paint with someone that you've never met before and paint a collaborative wall together, but both coming from a graffiti background. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but at the end of the day, it's a social thing as well. It's about hanging out with your mates and spending time on a pastime that you're passionate about. Graffiti is great for travelling. You can go anywhere, especially in the UK. I'm connected to so many people and I know so many people in so many cities and villages and towns, and through the power these days of social media and the internet, you have got this unlimited access to graffiti all over the country, and then taking it a step further, all over the world. I've gone and painted to France, painted in New Zealand, in China, on a holiday, on my honeymoon, having a random phone call with a guy in Thailand, and then get driven for 45 minutes out of Bangkok to God knows where, being dropped in the middle of nowhere, trying to find this guy's studio, finding the guy, jumping into his pickup with his mates, driving back into Bangkok onto a road with 8 lanes of traffic and some big kind of empty walls, and them saying, let's paint those walls, and it's the middle of the day. And you know, for us in our culture, you can't really get away with that sort of thing, but this was in like one of the most built up areas of Bangkok with massive IMAX cinemas, but also this kind of yin and yang of like a derelict building right next to it, and us just painting broad daylight 2-hour pieces, full colour, and having a ball, you know. This is quite a landmark point in my career, summarising almost 20 years of painting on a number of walls and trying somehow to have this message which is light and dark, which for me has always been quite important. I've never been completely happy, and I've had elements of depression and these real negative thoughts going through my head. Growing up with a sort of death just sitting behind you does some funny things. I've never had this huge life expectancy because I've been influenced by people dying young. But now I've got kids. For the first time, I'm kind of seeing, well, maybe I do want to live a bit longer than I'm expecting to, you know, and see them grow up. And it's a real weird thing. Coming to this exhibition, I'm trying to keep all of those in mind. Like, it's almost like a little bit of a contemplative look back for myself while I'm painting. This one is Druidston, which is Pembrokeshire, which is somewhere that we spend a lot of time throughout the summer working and playing, which is near St David's. I've also got the sort of train track, sort of cityscape, grayscale kind of piece, which is something that I used to do a lot of a few years ago. Another train. Kind of want people to be able to treat it like this journey throughout a room where there's different elements and different corners, and you can't really take in the whole thing in one place, because life's not like that, is it? You know, either. It's not like it all has to make sense. Started working on this wall, which was a headache. I painted it about 3 times. It started out with a big landscape of Snowdon with the graffiti lettering in the background and other stuff in the foreground, but it just wasn't working. So I ended up painting out the Snowdon landscape completely and just working with this, doing this sort of simple grayscale graffiti piece. It really is just a mishmash of these ideas and these thoughts just kind of coming together and being represented on the walls, whilst also trying to keep some aesthetic control over how it looks and how the balance is, you know. Because it's all about balance, isn't it? There's painting for myself on this wall, there's painting for the public on this wall. So it's just keeping that contrast and trying to bring it all together and represent both worlds. We've all got these crap bits of our lives, but you know what, we've all got these really positive bits too. And for me, one of the most positive things in my life is graffiti and is painting and is spray painting, and it's that expression. It's been what's created me and moulded me and taken me on this journey. And you know, this is basically me kind of celebrating that with myself, and everyone else is kind of invited to the party.
Oh, you have got a face like a slapped off. Cheer up, honey bunny, don't you think it's awful funny that the world is falling apart? Choose your spot, grab a rock, and hold on. Oh dear doctor, please medicate me. Can't you give me something strong to take? Makes everything that's bad seem great in me. A chickadee-boo, choose your spots, grab a rock, hold on, yeah. For dear life,